Alright, what's up guys, it's Mature Deity, and today we're going to be going over fire units for RTA. So this is going to be part of a 5-part video series where I'm going to be showing builds for each different character of the fire element that are worth building for RTA. So some of them I'll have to get examples from other people because I do not have every fire character leveled up and awakened. I do own every character in the game, but I will not have everything to show. So with this, these are going to be standard guidelines. I'm going to show 2 builds for each character and talk about them while showing the builds. And I'm going to highlight each piece of gear so you can get an idea of what kind of gear you're going to be wanting to look for, and I'll tell you different builds you can do on top of the ones I show. So like I said, this will be a 5-part guide. If you go down, I will have these timestamps so you can pick the character you want to pick. So go down, hover to the character you want to see, and this is going to just be a guide reference so you can come back to it at any point. One thing is the stats are going to be in-game stats. So if you are a newer player doing this, then you will go look at the build and just get as close to stats as possible. The only things that are important are damage dealers. Try to get as close to 100 crit rate as you can. Other than that, speed values, try to stay somewhat similar to them if you can. If they're very high speed characters, you might want to avoid trying to build them for now. Go for the characters that you could more likely build faster. I'll kind of talk about that when talking about them, but other than that, that's all I got. So the first character we're going to be showing, like I said, this will be all fire characters, so we're just going to go on the order of the lists that we have. These are going to be characters that I would say are good in RTA or other content, and I will just show builds for all of them. And there will be some characters I miss. If you think they're good characters, I'm sorry, they won't be included in here. But this will be a good majority of the characters. If you need to see builds on the other characters, you'll have to find them elsewhere, but just know that going in. So Abigail, the first version of Abigail we have is going to be a damage dealer Abigail. So as you see, we have our as much bulk as we can get. She's an HP scaling damage dealer with a little bit of crit damage. This build is okay. If you are a newer player, I would focus on the next build I'm going to show and a second of her being on a full bulk build. So in terms of her artifacts, really any artifact works well on her on this, any extra damage. So she is on Draco Plate right now, it's limited, but you can use any kind of artifact such as Golden Rose, her own personal one, Symbol of Unity, any kind of damage artifact will help you, or mitigation artifact. You could put Proof of Valor on her to help her survive while keeping your back unit alive. So Abigail isn't great the further you get into RTA, but as a new player, there is an easy build you can do for her that will allow you to get some quick use out of her. So here are the pieces that I have on her. So you can kind of gauge off this, you can see the kind of pieces I have, and then from there see when you're rolling gear if you should keep certain pieces. So as you see, the pieces aren't insane, but she works very well when I do need her. So now I'm going to cut over and show the second build. Okay, so this is the second build for Abigail. We are going to be looking at as much bulk as we possibly can get. As you see, we have a ton more defense, a ton more HP than what we had on the old build, and we are on Proof of Valor. So this is the kind of Abigail that is literally just there as a support character to keep your back character alive and also always be applying curse on the enemy. So this is the kind of build you'd want to aim for as a newer player. Now the speed, you can go all the way down to 200 and put more into bulk, but the more turns she takes, the better off you are going to be to keep reapplying the curse. So the faster you go with good bulk, the better, but overall you can build her 200 speed, more bulk, even if your gear doesn't roll high. If you have less speed with this bulk, you're solid. You can put either effectiveness or effect res on her, a splash, that works too. But in terms of artifact, you want a survivability artifact, so Proof of Valor can work really nicely on her. As a new player, you can have a couple plus 15 Proof of Valors before you make your plus 30s, and that way you can spread them out between characters until you get more 5-star artifacts. So the pieces of gear, we're going to go through them real quick, and this is the kind of gear that you would use on her. You could use any kind of set if you would like. You can go 6-piece HP, you can go 4 HP in defense, whichever you would like for that. So there are the 6 pieces of gear. Next up, we're going to go into Benimaru. Okay, so here is Benimaru, limited character. So his gear, he's going to be on penetration set because he does skill or single target damage for all but his extra attack that comes in later. So Benimaru isn't used too much, and he's a limited character, so I wouldn't worry about having him. But if you do have one, here is a build for him. Here is the pieces that we have on him. So I'll go through those real quick. And overall, I wouldn't really stress about getting a Benimaru built or geared. I don't have him on the greatest gear, as you can see. His crit chance, you want 100 crit chance on any damage dealer. If you get 98 to 90 or 88, 99 or 98, 99, you're going to be fine. You'll miss a crit occasionally. I play a lot of my characters at 99 crit rate just to maximize my stats, and you'll lose a game here and there, but most of the time when you miss a crit, it doesn't cause you to lose the game. So getting the overall more stat value out of it, 99 out of 100 hits, in my opinion, is better than having the consistency, but it depends on how you want to play the game. In terms of artifacts for him, his own personal artifact is good, but any damage artifact will work great on him, anything that increases damage. So that is going to be Benimaru. You can do it. I won't show a second build for him, but you can do a slower version of him with more bulk. A bulkier Benimaru surviving isn't a bad thing, so you could take some crit damage away, go like 220 speed and put it into bulk, and he will work fine. So now onto Edward. So here would be an example of an injury Edward. We keep on the same artifact, but pen set, injury set, you would want more bulk on him. I would say you want to try to stay around 20k with 1.3k defense would be solid. You can drop some speed on him to get more of that overall, but having a little bit of speed on Edward isn't bad. This Edward would work just fine. So this is an example of an injury build. So going into this, I'll go ahead and show the stat line here. And there's an injury Ed. Not crazy gear, but would work fantastic. So next up we have Hwayoung. Alright, so here's Edward. With Edward, you are going to have your penetration speed set. You don't have to go pen, you can go crit. It just matters, again, the overall stat line, especially as a newer player, if you're trying to get Edward geared for the first time. So speed is nice. There's also the injury build, which I will show next. But with this overall, you're trying to get as much HP as possible. You're going to be trying to get a good amount of defense, as close to 100 crit as you can, and some crit damage. So you want him to survive. His best two artifacts are Golden Rose or Sigurd's Scythe. By having those, he adds a ton of sustainability into his kit, makes him where he is very, very hard to kill because he's always healing. Golden Rose would be number 1, Sigurd's Scythe's number 2 because he's an HP scaling damage dealer. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and show the gear here. And this is going to be... I'm going to be showing a lot of pieces that are the same as other characters because I'm just moving gear for each build. Just I'm doing the auto thing most of the time. But just know you'll see some of the same gear. But that same gear should give you an idea that if you see the same gear 5 times, that means that's a gear you should be aiming for because you're going to need 5 of those pieces. So overall, that is the Ed. He's pretty good. If you have him, he's definitely worth building. But do not feel like you have to build him this crazy. A good 180 to 200 speed is good. A 20k HP with 1200 defense is solid. You can even go down to 230, 240 crit damage will work fine. A lot of times a crit chance neck will be very good on him. So that is going to be an Edward build, and I will show you the next the injury Edward build here in a second. All right, so here we are to Hwayoung. Hwayoung's a character that is nowhere near as good as she used to be, but she still can be okay. There's one build that a lot of people do. It's Triple Torrent. That's a super, super in-game build, and I am not going to be showing that because I do not have the gear for that. I would not farm for Triple Torrent Hwayoung. It's a kind of waste, in my opinion. But if you end up getting the gear for it, it could work. But overall, Hwayoung still can be okay, but you have to give her attack buff first. She used to be a super strong character in the game, but as of now, she's fallen off. So she's a character that does not crit and does true damage, so you want to avoid all crit chance and crit damage substats. This would ideally be 0, but the faster you go, the better. She turn cycles reasonably well, and then having good bulk, especially defense, because she gives herself a barrier. So, and best in slot artifact is Uberius Tooth or mitigation artifacts, but Uberius Tooth helps you with damage a lot. I personally would not suggest building her right now until maybe she gets a change again, but these are going to be the stats for her. And as you see, I'm on a broken set. If you want to go try to go immune, you can. But one thing again, to reach the stat lines, sometimes you can go broken sets to get the stats you need. It overall ends up being the stats at the end is awesome. Like, that's all you want. You want to get that stat line. And then eventually you'll upgrade to have the set that you want, whether it's immunity, torrent, pen, but it's just about getting to that point for now and then switching the gear later once you get what you need. So Hwayoung, quick coverage. We'll go on to Fire Ken next. All right, so here is Fire Ken. I personally do not think he is very good. He's okay in some PvE teams. If you're going to build him for PvE, you do not need these stats anywhere near this, but this is what a solid PvP ML Ken would look like. So it's an HP scaling damage dealer again. You want some speed, you want some bulk, as much bulk as you can get. A little bit of attack doesn't hurt. So this is overall the build for him. So looking at this, we're going to go and see each piece. You see there's a non-reforged piece within here for some reason. I guess it's higher gear score, but that is the overall build for Fire Ken. I'm not going to suggest for you guys to build him, but if you did decide you like Fire Ken and want to build him, this would be a build that you could probably get away with a couple wins here and there in RTA if you pick him right. All right, now we are going to go into Fire Ravi. All right, so Fire Ravi is a character that can be used in PvP as well. She's good in some PvE stuff. She is not great, she's outclassed, but if she is a character that's all you have that could fit a certain role that you're finding, then she is worth trying to gear. She can be very strong, so as you see here, we are on counter pen set. We have a bunch of bulk with a little bit of crit damage, a decent amount of speed because you want her cycling turns. So most of the time when you build units on counter set, you do want to be on speed main stat boots. So these stats are kind of pretty high. I think all the gears overall pretty solid. So you do not need to reach these, and you can go higher defense, lower HP, all the way down to like 16,000. Attack, try to aim around 2,500. She gets attacks boosting as she goes. She's an attack damage or attack scaling character. So overall, this would be a pretty solid build. Sigurd's Scythe is the best in slot for her, in my opinion. It will give her extra attack, and it makes her almost impossible to kill if they do not have a character that can do enough damage. So she can be very, very good for newer players, but overall she gets outclassed as we get into the Moonlight characters and other things. So I can show a speed build here in a second. Let me go through the gear one more time, a little bit slower, so you guys will have to pause on the gear portion. So there's a pretty rough piece, and there's the speed. So there is the gear. Now I'm going to show a speed build, and we'll move on to Adventurer Ras. All right, so here would be a speed set Ravi. This isn't going to be great, I'll be honest. She will perform. She will do her job. If this is how you have to build her, you can. She's pretty fast. She gets boosted every time she gets hit. She will hit super hard with her attack being this high and getting multiplied, even with lower crit damage. But this is going to be a fire build if you are wanting to go that route. In terms of her EE, it doesn't really matter. I haven't been showing EEs because we haven't got to any character that really requires them yet to be good. But this is, I like her to have the Dispel debuff while she's on counter set. So that is going to be Fire Ravi. Here are the pieces of gear. In terms of other artifacts, it is basically the same as we've been saying, though. You could use Golden Rose, you could use Symbol of Unity, Portrait of Valor. As long as she's getting some extra damage or survivability, it will be great. All right, so here we have Adventurer Ras. Adventurer Ras early game is going to be great for you. These stats are going to be very extreme in comparison to what you're normally used to seeing. So I do have a bit of effectiveness on him. This is going to be for PvE. That way you can land all your debuffs. Having 85 is really nice if you're going to try to use him in both RTA and PvP. But if you're focusing on only using him in PvP, all you really care about is defense, health, and you can take all the effectiveness away and maybe give him some effect res. So I'm not going to show multiple builds for Ras. He is a simple, straightforward tank. So the more HP he has, the more he's going to do for your team, and the more defense he has with HP, the more he's going to survive. So both of those are very easy concepts. Most tanks are going to be built similar to this, but the more bulk you have, the better. All right, now we are going, in terms of artifact, Aureus is going to be great on him. Adamant Shield. You can do Steadfast Gatekeeper, but overall I would say Aureus is going to be your #1 go-to. So now we're going to show Fire Charlotte. All right, so my Fire Charlotte is already geared. We are going to just take a look at how I have her. So I have her very slow. It is good to go speed boots on her, but I currently do not, and it works. Some characters you can experiment with and try some attack boots on them. I think speed would be much, much better, but by doing attack boots, I'm able to do infinite more damage, and I don't have as much bulk that way, but overall her damage is insane. So you do not want any crit chance on Charlotte. In terms of my EE, I'm doing increased combat readiness by 10% after being attacked. This adds a lot of pressure to the enemy team when you're attacking her. So best sets is going to be Lifesteal on her. I'm not going to show multiple sets. If you can do Lifesteal Torrent, that would be the best. But you do not need to do crit. Immunity is very good on her, so immunity might still outclass Torrent, so you don't have to worry about her getting debuffed as easily. But here are the the gear for her. None of it is that crazy. So if you do a little Banshee farming and maybe have some immunity pieces, you could slap together a decent Fire Charlotte this way. So she's a character that you won't pick super often, but when you do, she's actually pretty good in ML Landy. You could pick her with Rowana. In terms of artifacts, any damage artifact is nice. I have her on the Summer Charlotte artifact to increase crit damage and reduce damage suffered. So there are a lot of night artifacts you can do on her to get her to work. I would not use Elbrus on her, but using like Symbol of Unity is nice, so she can hit water units if you draft her that way. Portrait of Saviors is a solid choice. I do use Exorcist Tonfas occasionally as a 3-star option because some of you will not have Portrait of Saviors. So having a few Exorcist Tonfas as a new player is not bad to have. But overall, that is how I use her. So there are some other things you can do with her, but she's a pretty fast, quick character to get going, and she can work pretty well, especially into, I think, the current meta. You can probably get more use out of her. But all right, next we will be showing Ilynav. All right, so my Ilynav is on Elbrus. She is on my plus 30. I didn't even change her gear. This is just what she's on. So Ilynav, I have a slower one of those as well. As you see here, I am even on speed boots, and I'm still very slow. That's the only speed I have. But I've focused on getting more bulk on her, and I'm relying on Elbrus and RNG encounters. So if she doesn't counter, this character does not work because I built her so slow. But she's not that great. You can try to use her. I do win games with her sometimes. She's very fun to use because she has an RNG part of her skill kit. If she does proc with this, you can just win some crazy games. She's okay against APOC Ravi. She deals injury damage. I'm not going to show a secondary build on her, but if you do go speed set, just go around like 190 speed, as much bulk, and similar stats to this. You don't need attack because she's HP scaling damage dealer, but here is the gear that I currently have on her. This piece is awful, but it works. Okay, so that's the gear on Ilynav. In terms of EE, I am currently using the increased combat range by 50% when using Repel. So when she uses her S3, she will boost back up 50% and be ready to take her next turn again, doing her S2, causing additional injury damage into extra damage depending on how much injury the opponent's taken. And she'll have crit damage buff from her skill 3. So overall, Ilynav is okay and usable, but isn't great. Next up, we have Lilias, though. In terms of artifacts, though, for Ilynav, Elbrus is great. You can just use some mitigation artifact if you want. You can do more damage. Pretty much all the characters on here are going to be the same artifact choices unless I state otherwise. Even Steadfast Gatekeeper can be... No, that's not good. That's more PvE. It gives you your team defense. But overall, I mean, most of the time you can read the artifact and gauge whether it'll be good on them. But unless I specifically say a special artifact for that character, like Lilias is about to have one, then just use the general artifacts that you know are good for either survivability or damage. Alright, so here is Fire Lilias. Fire Lilias just got an EE, and I've been using her, and I'm loving her even more now. So I think she is in a great spot for the game. She only needs 50% crit chance because her kit gives her 50%. So crit chance by 50% when using her S3, meaning that you're going to be doing very, very good damage. A couple builds that you can do for her. This is going to be a more damage-focused build. And on speed set. Speed set's going to be the only way to build her, in my opinion. Trying to do anything else, you're going to suffer. But Lilias is a character that requires this artifact. After the caster uses a non-attack skill, decrease cooldowns of all allies by 1 turn. This can be used into Lua. It can be used into See Lilias. There's a lot of things that make this make Lilias very, very good. And now she has an EE. This is the best EE, in my opinion. When suppression is activated by That's Far Enough, increases combat radius to caster by 20%. So whenever they take their turn and use a non-attack skill, you will then cleanse if they are going to put debuffs on you, push them back if they don't have immunity, and then all your characters are skill reset. So if they pick a character like Lua against you, you're completely chilling, and this can just completely save you from a lot of headache. So I think Lilias is definitely very good for new players. The only problem is if you don't have this artifact, she won't be as usable. So just keep that in mind. If you have Ancient Dragon's Legacy, Lilias is very worth investing in. So one thing you can change with Lilias is going to be, one, you can do more speed. I personally think 240 is a sweet spot. I didn't go in and re-gear because she was already geared. But in terms of effectiveness and effect res, having effect res can help a lot too. So by building a Fire Lilias with a decent amount of effect res, like 150, it can save you some headache as well from different debuffs. Obviously, the more you have, the better it's going to be, but that is a idea for Fire Lilias. In terms of the gear, I don't think I showed it. Hold on one second. I'm trying not to go too fast so you guys can pause on each piece of gear. I'm trying to show for at least 3 seconds. Okay, so that is all the gear on her. Now we are going to move on to Kayron. So Kayron is going to be a character that you can build a bunch of different ways. I personally don't ever use them. So you can go for a PvE route, Kayron. I use this in Automaton Tower. He can be decent in Labyrinth, things like that. I'm going to go ahead and show the gear on him just real quick. Overall, if you have him, he can be used as a counter cleave pick, but the problem is if he gets stripped, it is very bad for you. So I don't recommend Kayron very much to newer players unless he wants some help with PvE content. He can be pretty solid though, and you can gear him so many different ways just because of his skill kit. In terms of his artifact, this is usually the best one on him. If you evade, you have a chance to counterattack. So there is a counter build that I'm going to show you in 1 second. But overall, Kayron's pretty simple. He's been around the game for forever. He's been buffed once, I believe, if that. But this is a skin on Kayron, by the way, too. Just so you know, you might see some skins on my account. That is Hopefully it doesn't confuse you on the character, but 1 second I will show the counter build. Okay, so here would be an example of a counter effect res build on him. The pieces are not reforged, but the more effect res you go while still maintaining damage is great. You can trade all of his speed rolls into effect res and damage. So the higher effect res you get, the better. When you're doing this build, you can use the guild artifact to give you extra effect res, or you can just rely on dodging and counterattacking between everything. So this is a decent stat line, but the slower you go and put these speed rolls into damage or mostly effect res, if you can get 200 effect res on him, he can be a terror. So this is the usual anti-cleave style build for Kayron. So he's okay. This is going to be very hard for you to gear early on. You're going to have to just go with a general Kayron for a while, but overall his artifact still is the same. In terms of his best EE, if you're doing the counter build, you want to have the S1 damage increase. It is very, very nice. So, and it also gives crit chance on his EE, which is great. So that is it for Kayron. A lot of you will probably have him because he's an RGB character, but just know if you're going to be building the anti-cleave style build, it does take some pretty heavy gear quality. So I don't think I showed the pieces. Let's go through the pieces real quick, and then we will show bomb model Kanna. I'll just show a quick build on her, but she's going to be a PvE exclusive character. All right, there you go. There is the Kayron build. All right, so for a Kanna build, this build isn't a great example, but she is a PvE only character. You will not use her in PvP ever. This is extreme. I put it in the auto thing and thought the build was pretty funny, so I'm going to go ahead and show it. So as you see, we're at 350 crit damage, and then we're 183 speed. As long as you're hovering around 180 speed, you're fine. 250 crit damage is plenty, and 3600 attack and some bulk is great. This is just an extreme example. I want to show this because it's showing some gear that I have not shown yet. So this is a destruction set. Destruction set is overall the best gear quality or gear score set you can use in the game. So looking at the pieces, here's the sword, here's the helmet, here's the chest, here's the neck, ring, and boots. So overall, that is some really good destruction gear. So that will be a good example for you if you are looking to get destruction gear. You can also take this kind of gear and have HP instead of attack, and it will work on a ton of characters. So keep that in mind. Destruction gear is very, very nice to have for both attack scaling and HP scaling damage dealers. So now there's nothing special to counter EE. I have the 50% chance to make them unable to be buffed. It doesn't really matter for PvE. Just use whichever. I think the 5% one's the best. But that is all we have for Kanna. I'm not going to go too crazy on her. This is an unrealistic build, but just put her on free attack set and she'll work. Next up, I will show a Fire Lidica build, but I do not suggest building Fire Lidica. Okay, so here would be a Fire Lidica build. This would be an in-game Fire Lidica. As you see, you want super speed. So with Fire Lidica, you don't really care about her damage or anything. You want as fast as you can with effectiveness. You can do some damage and put her on Guiding Light and go slower. So you could do a 270 on Guiding Light and she'd be okay, but she is just outclassed. I would not personally recommend building her. She's my favorite character in the game, so I do have some investment in her. I do try to play her usually here and there, but Fire Lidica is not suggested in any way. But she, if you are going to play around with her, if you can go the damage route, that's what I was on. But this is the kind of unit you would use to contest, to try to push back somebody. But with Zio and all the Guiding Light characters out right now, she just doesn't really have a very good spot in the game. So until she gets buffed, she will be a bench character. I highly suggest you bench her. But now from here, I don't really... Guiding Light is just going to be your best artifact no matter what you do with her if you want to build her. So now we're going to go ahead and look at Fire Kawerik. Okay, so here is a Fire Kawerik build. I didn't show the gear on Lidica. You'll see it's just high speed. That doesn't really matter. But here's the gear on Kawerik. If you're going to go Kawerik, you want to go as fast as you can, and Tagahells is usually the best option. One thing you can do is you can go Broken Set, and you can use Black Hand of the Goddess. This will give you extra crit chance, and it is his personal artifact. It is quite good on him. You can get an additional 22, or actually this is being changed. You get an additional like 16% crit chance or something. So it allows you to build him a little bit easier. But with Kawerik, you need to go crazy fast, or he's not going to work good. He does have high base speed. If you are able to gear him as an early game player, he could be an okay option. But the thing is, there's better characters still, so I wouldn't really focus on him, even though he is an awesome character. So here is the gear on him. I have the 20 speed sword, 19 for the helmet, 22 for the chest. In terms of ranges for his stats, like I said, 260 with damage, and you'll be if you can't do that, I would not try to use him. But that is his overall gear. In terms of his EE, I do before attack increase attack a caster because I like him doing as much damage as possible. But overall, the rest is not important. The reason you put him on book is so you can soul burn and guarantee reset a character as long as you have a Molagord. So by doing this, you can reset their highest effectors unit, like their Destina, to where they cannot use any skills. So he can be usable, he can be pretty solid, but the problem is he's a not super fast characters and he can't be put in guiding light. So if the opponent picks Zeo or Ran, he's getting one shot and you're dead. So he is just not optimal right now because he does not have the same base speed as Ran or Pierre or any of the other characters. So do not suggest him, but he can be very, very fun if you can pull him off as a late draft pick, like 4th or 5th pick. Now we are going to go on and show Fire Mercedes. So Fire Mercedes is a pretty simple character overall. You just want as much attack, defense, as much attack as you can. If you have some defense HP, it's fine. You don't really need any speed. You can do a speed build, but I am just full focused on damage and fully relying on RNG with her kit. So her best in slot artifact is her artifact. Putting immunity on her does help. And then overall, you just wanted to hit super hard. So you do have other options. You can go lower damage, higher speed. You can go on speed set, attack set. It doesn't matter what you decide to do. Just focus on having her do as much damage as you possibly can. Some people do a 260 build Mercedes, and it works pretty okay because people don't expect it. They're used to having super slow counter Mercedes or just slower Mercedes in general. So it is an option. But the biggest thing is just focus on having her put out a lot of damage. If you want to see the gear, here's the current gear on her. Okay, so next up we're going to be showing a Milim build example. Or actually we're going to show two. So Mercedes, very easy. If you need a more free or early game player example of a build for Mercedes, you can check out my 30-day account challenge guide or 30-day account challenge overview video, and I show all the stats on my Mercedes that I used for that challenge. So it is very, very more new player friendly to get that gear set up. All right, next up is Milim. All right, so the two most common builds with Milim are going to be counter and speed. I'm going to show one example of each. So the counter set Milim, I went super high defense. So with Milim, as long as you're around 3k-ish attack, 2.8k, 3.2k, you want some speed on her. She needs to be at least 175 to 180, hopefully 170 you maybe get away with, I'm not sure, but 180 has worked well for me. You could take some of this defense and put it into HP, but as a mage, her defense will scale much higher than HP rolls, so that's just how she ended up working out for me. Pen set is nice, you don't have to go pen. In terms of her EE, the Dragon Dive recover amount, in my opinion, is just the best for both, even the speed one, because you want to keep her alive. So this can just win you games, but also the damaged ones are good too. She is a limited character from the Slime collab, so just as much damage as you can get in terms of her artifact. You can either go mitigation. This is the artifact I like. It gives you more chances to counter, meaning she's going to heal and just get more sustainability than if I were to put a counter artifact on her. Or not counter, a sustain artifact on her. But also Tagahel's book is very nice to have on her, but that is mostly for the speed build. But this is personally how I like my Milim. She wins almost every game I pick her in. If you pick her right, she's very, very good. So here's the gear on her. Okay, now I will show the speed set Milim. Okay, so here's an example of a speed set Milim. The faster you go, the better. The more damage you have, the better. Keep that in mind. But the thing is, 260 is usually the guideline as you're getting further into RTA. You can build her 240 early on and you'll probably be fine, but the further you go, these are in-game base stats that you can try to reach. So 265, a lot of landies are built to 240 to 250 speed range. 265 will guarantee outspeed landy, and then your Milim will be able to soul burn because of Tagahel's and one-shot, usually multiple characters, depending on how you do your draft. Milim is a very strong pick. If you pick her right. So this is a decent example. Here are the pieces on her. We have that again, this. So the thing is, you'll have to decide. So as you see this neck has been put on multiple characters, you'll have to decide what the highest priority character you're going to have, and some of your other characters are going to suffer on stats for a long time. That's how my account normally is, but for the sake of this video, I'm trying to go fast, and I got to re-gear every character and get through it all. So that's why I'm reusing a lot of gear. I'm trying to just show really good examples of each build, but these are just stats to aim for. You do not have to hit these stats to make them usable. Again, I just want to reiterate that. All right, but next up, like I said, I would use the same EE regardless, but the other ones are nice too. I just like her surviving. She does enough damage usually on any gear I put her on that I don't need the extra damage or the extra stack if I kill. So that is my opinion on Milim. She is pretty solid, but not a must-have. All right, so Politis. Politis is a character that can be built a million different ways. I will show 2 builds for her, but this is a full damage Politis. This is the kind of Politis that you would see cleaving style players pick. You would be picking her to do as much damage as possible. I am on double torrent crit set, so I have no HP whatsoever. She's a mage, so she scales off defense, so I do have some decent bulk because of the defense. But overall, I just want to do as much damage as possible with her. But there are a billion different styles you can do. You can just go speed set and do a bunch of bulk. You can go speed set and do decent damage with some bulk. Just always aim for around 180 speed minimum, all the way up to 220 speed. You can go a 0 damage full bulk poly. I'm not going to show a second build actually. You can go a 0 damage full bulk poly. And say you have 1500 defense, 15k HP, and you could be sitting on some effect res, because effect res Politis can completely screw the opponent. If you are going to be going on the effect res route, Abyssal Crown is your best friend. If you are a newer player and do not have Abyssal Crown, there's an artifact called Sierra Wren. Layla Violin can also work on her decently, but Sierra Wren will be your Abyssal Crown replacement until you get it. So this just adds RNG debuffs. You can silence sleep. So those are 2 debuffs that will just shut down the character. You can decrease hit chance and attack, making their damage dealers do less. It's just an RNG fest of which debuff you get and if you even land one. But a Politis, the Disruptor Politis like that is great, but this is a damage dealing variant. So multiple different things. I gave you the stat line. You don't have to worry about attack if you're going full bulk. She will just be there to debuff. There's also the high effectiveness Politis. You can go full bulk, no damage, 190 to 210 speed with like 200 effectiveness. This way you can be hitting their high effect res units and stunning them or putting debuffs on them. So our S1 stuns, and this also gives them buffable. So a high effectiveness Politis with super bulk is also really good. She's just a character, like I said, that can be built in a million different ways. But now we are just going to go ahead and skip forward to Carrot. So Carrot is a pretty simple character to build. She's a free 3-star special, or not free, but she's a 3-star with a specialty change. She used to be super good. She could be used on Tagahel's book. I have her on Atticus Scepter because all my books were taken in my normal lineup of characters. I didn't change her gear. This is my normal build on her. You can go more attack to do more damage from your burns, but I like mine surviving as much as possible by having high defense. Because she's a mage, she gives herself a barrier every time she gets hit, and then takes another turn. She can get a barrier again. Every time she gets hit, she burns the enemy. So she's a character right now that can be decent, but the problem is everybody is going to have Mediator Kawerik soon, and you cannot draft her into Mediator Kawerik. It will not work well. So if you pick Mediator Kawerik and Reasearcher Carrot late in the draft, like pick Mediator Kawerik early and pick Reasearcher Carrot into say ML Landy at the end of the draft, it can work pretty solid. But overall, there are just too many counters to Carrot, and if you aren't landing your burn, she is doing nothing. But here is the gear on her. This is going to be gear that is focusing bulk, no crit chance or crit damage. You do not need either on her. The better you do with your overall attack for your burns is going to be best. In terms of her speed, you can go all the way from 200 to 250. Any speed value in there is great. So this is where an HP percent or attack percent neck can work great if you did end up rolling some attack rolls into a HP percent neck. They can go on a character like Carrot or Senya, or if you have an attack percent piece that rolled high into defense or attack and you have crit chance, you could change the crit chance and make it a piece for one of these style characters. There are like 4 or 5 in the game, so these pieces can be really nice. And these are the pieces that are attack percent but do not have any crit chance, crit damage. They are great on all the characters I just mentioned, so you will see them as you're watching through all this, or skipping to the character. If you have the character, you'll skip to them and see. But overall, the boot's pretty bad, but it works just fine on her. So that is Carrot. Very simple. Like I said, Tagahel's can be great, but this is a free character, basically, that you can all get and possibly win you some games. Or specialty change is kind of annoying to do, though. So now we are going to look at Roy. All right, so here is Roy. Roy is going to be mostly used on lifesteal now. And the meta has changed to where he's becoming a lifesteal character. The best build for him is Torrent with lifesteal. I do not have that a good set for him. All my Torrent gear has his defense rolls. So you want to build Roy with as little bulk as you possibly can because he has the ability to reduce the damage taken. So the best artifact for him is Chatty. You can get this for free. Every player can with well, not for free. I think most of you have to spend 900 Skystones. I had a free ticket from playing for so long. So I guess you spend 900 Skystones, but you can guaranteed get this artifact maxed out. I have not gone and done it yet because there's no time limit on story. Since I don't have the gear to properly build him, I have not done it. But lifesteal Roy can be very good and very fun. So if you do have a Roy, I'd look into gearing him up. If you do have the gear, maybe your AI gear rolled to build him. But this is the gear on him that I currently have. And this build with crit set would work perfectly fine. This would be amazing. I'm just talking about min-maxing him. In terms of if you want to gear him, you can have a little bulk and he'll still work. You have less damage, he'll still work. But overall, you want 100 crit chance, obviously. But mine is pretty fast, which is nice. So let's keep that in mind. You can reduce the stats on all these characters. Again, these are in-game examples of the characters. But now we're going to show a Tenebria. Alright, so here is Tenebria. My favorite build on Tenebria is effectiveness. You can build her damage. Overall, she's not a character you really want to gear as a new player. She can be good in PvE, though, and she has some potential in PvE as a 5th pick if your opponent does not pick immunity. So if your opponent picks high effect res characters but doesn't pick any immunity, you can pick her with really high effectiveness and you can make her work really well. So mine has some attack, and overall I'd be more interested in having as much bulk on her and having her just be a controlling unit, but this is just how the gear ended up that I put on her. So here is the gear. So you do not have to go 255 speed. If you're drafting her into a team that's playing very slow, you can get away with even 230 with even more effectiveness. So this is just a quick example. In terms of her EE, I have the chance to dispel buff when using Dark Explosion or S1, so that way you can S1 strip and then put them to sleep. The thing is, she is not consistent is the problem with her. Her overall things, you can see 70% chance to put them to sleep. This is 85% chance to defense break and sleep. So there's a chance you just miss your debuffs on the cleansing character and you are screwed. So just keep that in mind. That's why she's not used often, is she is just not consistent. A lot of debuffers in this game are not consistent, meaning that a lot of people will not play them. And also the 15% mechanic being in the game just makes playing debuffers feel really bad, because you could have a game that you should win 100 times out of 100 and you end up losing. So next up we will show Holiday Yufine. So Holiday Yufine has fallen off a little bit because of Last Rider Crow coming in, and also ML Landy being on counter. So this is a torrent speed set build. This is going to be giving you more damage. You want a little bit of bulk on Holiday Yufine, and your damage isn't as important. The more you do, the better, but you want her to survive. She has built-in evasion to her kit, and she is a character that you can use the artifact Guide to a Decision, the Guild Arty. Whenever they have full HP and get hit, they will get push Chimeranus. So if a debuffer tries to hit her, and she has full HP, then she will boost up and her S3 will full cleanse your team and increase attack of all allies. So that's pretty good. Overall, she can be solid. She might see a return later, but just know there are a lot of counters to her. If you pick her to LR Crow, every time you attack, it reduces LR Crow's skill 3 again. You will lose the game almost guaranteed. Second, ML Landy. If they have ML Landy and you try to use her, every time you AoE, Moonlight Landy on Elbrus has a very high chance to counter. She has a chance for the other 3 characters you hit, plus hitting her on her base chance. You have like almost a 50-50 chance of getting countered every time you rip a skill with her, because her S1 is also AoE. So she has fallen off a little bit, but she still can be okay. So next up will be Jacko. Okay, so looking at Jacko. Jacko is one of the characters that is very good in cleave right now. You can go slower than this, but this is why I was saying the more damage you have on a properly built Jacko, this is where she thrives. So mine would be slower with more damage is how I would like to build her. Her personal artifact is really good on her. It gives a lot of damage on single target attacks. Pen set because she only does single target attacks, but this is the gear on her. But she is very, very solid. But I do not recommend her for new players because she requires pretty dang good gear, as you see. So do not push to try to use her, because the thing is you need to build her decently fast with insane stats to work properly, on top of having another character to activate her. So if you don't have a character to activate her with the chain of Kayron, then she will not get boosted as easily and she's going to be useless. So I do not recommend her to new players because of the high speed requirement, but she can be a fantastic unit. Now next up will be Winter. Okay, so winter limited character again. Most of the RGB very good characters are limited. Some are not, but most are. So winter is a character that needs 100 crit chance because of her skill kit, and you want as much effectiveness as possible. If you can go 250 speed or above, that's very solid. And I use the artifact Secret Art Swordstorm, so she gets a combat readiness push every time they use a non-attack skill, so allows her to cycle turns faster. Winter is a very solid counter pick that still can work, but you have to draft her very smartly. She's not a character that can be picked all the time. Most of the characters that can be picked all the time are going to be supports and moonlight characters. So watching this fire video first, just know that most of the characters that are safe, easy picks are going to just be in the light and dark characters. So just keep that in mind. But this is a very simple, you're just going for as much speed with crit chance and effectiveness, and you are good to go. So crit chance here, this piece rolled 37, sorry I didn't show it for very long. And then this piece is pretty good gear score, has effectiveness, speed, and crit chance. This piece just effectiveness with crit chance, some bulk, and some speed. And then we're going to have the boots that have a bunch of crit chance. So I think she's way over crit cap, but I am not sure. But overall, she's definitely over crit cap because this is 60, this is 20, that's already 85. But this is just a quick example. Winter can be a solid unit stunning the enemy, but I do not super recommend putting too good of stuff on her unless you don't have many other options. So, or if you already have a bunch of options, she could just be someone you could pick situationally. But next up, we are going to show Summertime Iseria. Okay, so Summertime Iseria is a character that you want to have a large amount of attack, decent bulk, decent speed, at least like 240. If you go a little bit slower, it's fine. But the problem is you need a fast character for her as well to activate her. So you need a character like Piera, Ran, Closer Charles, somebody that is built very high speed that will AoE for you. So just know that going into her, she can be fantastic. She places bombs on the enemy and pushes your team up. So she's a bridge character, meaning that she bridges the gap between the faster characters and slower to push you above the enemy. So her best artifact is her own personal artifact. It is not recommended to do anything else. She cannot land crits, but she has a free soul burn to give herself an extra turn. So you want as much effective as you possibly get. I would say aim for 200. You can go higher, that's even better. It just adds your overall usability for her. So these are the pieces of gear on her. As you see, all very high effectiveness or very high attack. No effectiveness on the helmet, which is lowering it a little bit, but we have hit set. And then here's the necklace. So these are all different pieces of gear that can work very well. Hopefully I didn't show them too fast. I'll go back and hold a little bit longer. I'm sorry if I'm trying to go too quick. This video is taking me forever. So I do apologize, and I have to do this for every 5 elements while free gear removal is still up because I got to re-gear my account once I'm done. So that is Summertime Iseria. Next up, we're going to show Shuna, and then from there, I will just kind of talk about the characters I don't have geared. Alright, so Shuna, this is just a really sloppy build for her. She doesn't have Awakening, she doesn't have anything. I didn't include my already equipped gear, so this was just the gear it gave me. This Shuna would work. You want to go a decent amount of speed, and then the thing is, she is very, very good right now. So her skill 3 is going to put the enemies to sleep after dispelling 2 buffs on all enemies. So she is a stripping soul weaver, which can be great, and she decreases her attack. So this is very, very nice to have. In terms of this, it dispels debuffs from all allies, 2 of them, so she's a cleanser. And then also her personal artifact is usable, but there are much better Soul Weaver artifacts that you can do. One good one for a 4-star option would be Eternus, so that way if anyone on your team's debuff, she will push, she'll be able to sleep or cleanse. You have the option to do whichever one you want. She is becoming very, very good in RTA. So if you do have her, she is easy to gear and can work very well. In terms of your effectiveness, you got to find a balance of which one you want. Sometimes it's nice to have effectiveness just in case you want to sleep their supports. Otherwise, I would say having around 100 effectiveness is probably all you would need, because you're never going to build enough effectiveness to hit their like 200 plus effectiveness characters. But if you want to go the full effect or resist route and only pick her in certain situations, that is an option too. So here is the gear on her. Like I said, this was gear that was not equipped to any character. So it is just what she ended up with. Obviously, this is more realistic for a newer player's stats, but her best EE is the chance to increase sleep on her skill 3. It makes it more consistent. So having a 90% or 100%, if you're fully mullet, is 100%. She's one of the few characters that has a 100% chance to sleep everything. This is so rare to have a 100% chance to sleep. So she is very, very solid. So from this point on, I'm just going to quickly talk about the other characters. I should have them all out right now. If I'm missing anyone, comment it down below and I can try to squeeze it in somewhere, or I can edit the video maybe or do something. But Tamarin, this is just common PvE build Tamarin. Tamarin, you stop really using her once you clear all of Abyss, but there will be new Abyss floors eventually and more challenging content that for PvE that we will want her. So if you got her from following my guide, you will be very happy. Next up, we have Bihu. Bihu is just going to be built exactly like Fire Tenebria. So look at Fire Tenebria's build, and he will be exactly the same as that. You do not want the crit chance. Just look at Fire Tenebria and aim for that for Bihu. Soul Bad Guy, I would not bother touching. AE Ning Ning, she is going to be similar to Shuna. You can go even faster though. She's a very similar character to Desert Jewel Basar. Aim for 250 speed, some bulk. She can be used very well. She has barrier inversion. If you're fighting Airwells or Fallen Cecilias or other characters that get barriers, she can work very well into them. But she is another limited character that you likely do not have. In terms of Sirmia, just PvE character only. Some people try to use her in PvP, but she is not a consistent good option. Cecilia is a PvE character, build her just like Ras. Elfelt is pretty much just built the same as Jacko. The thing is, if she puts a character to sleep, you don't have to build her as much crit chance. I do not advise using her or Elagos. They're both going to be the same. Try to build them at least 270. Elagos maybe even faster. But these are characters you shouldn't really worry about as a new player. Haste is the same. He's high base speed, but I would not worry about doing him. Acades is the only character left on here that's worth looking at. Besides Surin, Surin is going to be speed imprint. For cleavers, and for Surin, just build her 200 speed. Kind of similar to the Kanna build I showed. I guess that'd be a good example. You can build her faster if you want, but do not have to. So Acades, though, you just build the same as any Soul Weaver. You want to aim for around 150 to 200 effect resist, and then a bunch of HP. You want her around 200 speed, and you should be good to go. She can be used in PvP and RTA. She's great for a lot of content, so she is not a bad option. Other than that, that is all the fire characters. So like I said, if you don't see a character, I can work on upgrading or updating this later, but this is just a quick beginner fire build guide. So that way you could see the gear that is on the characters, have a better idea of the gear to roll, and just overall be able to see stat lines that you want to aim for in the future. Building them, you do not have to reach these stats though. Remember that. Just aim as close as you can to them and you will be able to build them like this later. But that's all I got for the fire video. I'm going to upload this as a test. Let me know what to do for the next video if I need to change anything. But I had to do pretty good gear on everyone just so this video can be used by mid-game, early game, and in-game players. You just have to decide what you are and decide the stat line from there. But if you're new, if you're willing to subscribe, that'd be awesome. It's been Mr. Deity, and I will see you all in the next video, which is going to be water characters. But peace out.